So a lot of the early videos on this channel were about MOONBLAST, my Pokemon fan comic. And as of December 2023, that comic has been put on indefinite hiatus. I never honestly dreamed this would happen, and it was never my intention or hope to ever do this for any comic, including MOONBLAST. So let's look at the key reasons why, because there are many lessons to be learned, and the last reason is probably both the most specific and annoying. So yeah, stick around for that. So the first mistake is what I'd like to call the Bleach mistake. Bleach was I think it's over. Bleach was a shonen manga that was pretty popular. It lost my interest after a while because the pacing was just absolute garbage. Not at the beginning. I still have like the first 9 volumes of the manga because it was started off really solidly. I really enjoyed that. But later on, like several arcs in, one thing I would notice is that I would come in and read the new chapter for the week and leave feeling really dissatisfied because nothing would happen. And the reason why is because there were often very few panels per page, which meant there wasn't much story progression per page. And let's contrast this to One Piece, where there are often arguably maybe too many panels per page and there's just so much story progression on so many pages. And it makes sense because the author of One Piece clearly has this gigantic story he's trying to tell. I can relate. This is how I've been approaching TRIFORCE of Power, my ZELDA fan comic. I often have arguably too many panels on a page, but that's because I want to keep the story moving to get to the next point. I was used to doing those cram pages, so whenever I started to do MOONBLAST, I was like, I want this comic to be pretty, so let me do the bigger, panels. Let me do fewer panels per page. And ultimately, that was a mistake because I have 65 pages of MOONBLAST and barely anything happened. Itiri leaves town. She meets Kai. Yeah, it would be Kai. She meets Kai. They run away from Beedrill. They go to the other town. They have an incident with a breaks-in, which I really enjoyed that part. And then we get a flash over to Basil, and we get a cute little scene with him. And then we come back to Itiri and Kay. We get a little bit of Itiri's backstory, and they have an encounter with a bunch of adorable Vulpix. Basil catches up with them, and then Basil temporarily joins the group. That's it. It took 65 pages to tell that, and to me that is not enough. And yeah, it was very disheartening looking back on it and realizing that barely anything happened. And to be perfectly honest, one of my goals was kind of to have slower pacing, and I think I just didn't really realize what that meant, which sounds really stupid, but like, this is my second comic that I've ever worked on, and it is just so different from TRIFORCE of Power. TRIFORCE of Power started off as like a gag comic, sort of like had this weird evolution from a 4-panel gag to a fast-paced sort of story thing. I mean, there's still a lot of gags, but anyway, so like that was just totally different than this, where I was kind of starting afresh with no sort of structure. And maybe that was the problem. I didn't have enough structure in MOONBLAST, so I didn't really understand how things would play out in regards to the pacing choices that I was making. So again, lessons here. You gotta know what you're getting into, or at least kind of get a sense of how the pacing's gonna go. And the second thing that I think was a problem, which is incredibly ironic, was thumbnailing. Everybody says you should thumbnail your comics, and I think that it works really well for a lot of people, and I still do thumbnailing sometimes, like if I'm doing any action sequences especially. But I think that the thumbnailing for MOONBLAST, which I was doing so much more than TRIFORCE of Power, actually kind of worked against me because it kept me fixated on the appearance rather than looking at the pacing, rather than looking at it holistically, which obviously is not good. So yeah, I guess it's basically that these different tools like scripting, thumbnailing, all that kind of stuff can definitely be helpful, but it is necessary to look at it holistically and look at all the parts involved, not just the appearance, but what's the pacing like, how's the story being delivered, and so on. The third reason for the hiatus was audience and personal goals not meeting. Well, how to explain this? So basically, whenever I started this, I didn't really do enough research. I did look at some Pokemon fan comics, but just not enough to realize that there really is just no audience for Pokemon fan comics where it focuses on original characters who are not Pokemon. If my original characters were Pokemon, I would probably be fine. That's the majority of Pokemon fan comics, is focusing either on Pokemon original characters, usually like mystery dungeon stories, and then doing like Nuzlocke runs of the games. Characters we already know from the game are usually the focus. So, Moonblast is neither of those. The main character, Tiri, is a human original character. She has Jasmine, the Ponyta, but she's not as much of a focus as a Tiri is. Kai enters the scene. He's a human OC. And Basil is around, but not around enough. I mean, you can never have enough Basil. And then, like, over time, like, I kind of, like, started to realize that there was this problem. And I was like, well, maybe I'll be fine. Maybe I just haven't, like, done something that I need to do to attract the readers. I kept working on this for like 2 years and releasing pages fairly regularly, to be honest. I mean, it was 65 pages in 2 years. It's quite a bit, as well as releasing like other content like art and so on that was on brand for the story, usually like seasonal, autumnal themed things. And yeah, I just never got anything. See, this comic is on Tumblr and Tapas, and I'm putting it up on DeviantArt now, even though it's on hiatus, because I'll get to that in a moment. But basically it's on several places and it just really never got much of a following at all. Comic Fury did okay, but whenever I compared it to other Pokemon comics, I'm like, no, this is not enough. This is just not worth the investment for me. And this goes back to the personal goals thing, because if I was just doing this comic as just a side thing, like I don't have any other hopes for it, it's just doing it for its own sake and I don't have any investment in it, and that would be fine. But that's not the case. Like, I really do want to make a living off of my creative work, and so I have to consider what is my return for my investment of time into this creative project that is the comic. And the investment return is basically nothing, which is incredibly sad, because I do really love this comic and I am proud of a lot of the work that I put into it, even though the pacing was not that good. But yeah, it just wasn't getting the return that I needed in order to justify continuing to invest my time into making this comic. So I had to put it on hiatus in order to work on something else that I think will have a better return on investment. And that sounds like really cruel and calculating, but again, it has to do with, my personal goals. Like, a passion project can't just be a passion project for me. It has to have those other desired outcomes, especially for a long-term project like this. And that's all me. This is my choice, that these are my goals that I've chosen to have and chosen to keep having. So I'm not complaining or anything. It's just the way it is. I did put Moonblast on hiatus as opposed to like just saying it's canceled, because I really do want to return to it someday. I would either kind of pick up where I left off, or I would kind of do like a reboot where I present the story that I have in mind, but I do it through the perspective of Pokemon in order to draw in more of the Pokemon fan comic audience. So like, instead of us starting off with a Tiri, maybe we would start off instead with Taro, the fletchling, and show her leaving her hometown from his point of view, and then we would go to like the Beedrill's point of view. I mean, not for too long, because nobody really likes Beedrills as far as I know, but should go to a Pokemon's point of view for the whole encounter where Tiri and Kai meet each other. And then I guess for the next part we go to the Breakson's point of view for that whole interaction. Yeah, something like that, just to hopefully get in more of that audience, get in more visibility, and so on. I really do love drawing Pokemon. The designs are so good. There's only like a couple Pokemon designs where I could say like I think that's a bad design. And considering like they have hundreds, maybe thousands of Pokemon at this point, the fact that there's only like a handful of bad designs and the rest are like really good and or really effective is like insane. It's so cool. I have so much admiration for the art in the Pokemon franchise. But anyways, so I guess that the lessons for me here are just that I just need to not only look at things holistically and just use tools as insofar as they are going to work for me in my process, but also consider my goals, so like with the pacing, and also my goals as far as like building an audience and so on. And before anybody says it, because I think I mentioned it in another video, is that yeah, it's true that there isn't much of a carryover from like fan comic audience to like your main audience, the people who will stick with you and follow all that you do. That's just part of making fan comics. So Moonblast will hopefully, I really do want to return to it someday, but we will just have to see. We shall see. And yeah, I do want to get this YouTube back and running again, so I'm hoping to get regular, at least semi-regular posts on here. There was a time after I put out that Jodha Akbar versus Tolkien, I guess, video, where basically I had made all the videos that I originally wanted to make whenever I first started the YouTube. Now I think I'm starting to get other ideas, and yeah, we'll just have to see. And overall, like, even if the content, even if like the focus changes a bit, it's still going to be writing focused and so on. So yeah, anyways, I don't have a clever conclusion except that I love Rowlet so much. I've drawn Rowlet, my character Basil, who is a Rowlet, for the Pokemon fan comics so many times. I love him so much. They need more owl Pokemon. I think that there's just the little guy from Johto and his evolved form, and then Rowlet and his forms, and like I think that's it. I don't think we have any more owls. That's a crime. They need to rectify this. More owls. We need more owls.